Thanks, Cheryl. Well, do you ever wonder if there's life after death? Joining me now is near-death experience survivor Heidi Barr, the author of What I Saw in Heaven, the incredible true story of the day I died, met Jesus, and returned to life a new person. Welcome to 100 Huntley Street, Heidi.
Thank you so much. It's so good to be here.
It's our honor to have you here with us today. And Heidi, you have such a miraculous and incredible personal story of experiencing death and eternity and coming back. Take us to the day you died. You were 16 years old. You were out at a horse ranch riding your favorite horse, Heather.
Yes.
Your sisters were with you there. Tell us what happened.
We were in an accident caused by another horse, a runaway horse, and she flipped over backwards, fell off a hill, and crushed me. Immediately, unexpectedly, left my body, and I found myself 30, 40 feet up in the air looking down at my dead body. And I realized, as I watched everything happening, I felt really bad. I didn't want my sisters to see me die. But I noticed a light over my shoulder. It was coming over my right shoulder, flowing, a golden light. And I turned to look, and there was a man floating up there with me, and I recognized him immediately, which was kind of unusual. I shouldn't have recognized him. I was raised in an atheist Jewish family, and I knew this was Jesus. So the minute I recognized him, I said, "Hi, I know you." And he floated right by my side, and that was kind of the beginning of my adventure.
That's amazing. And it's interesting, Heidi, how you recognized Jesus right away. But as you just said, you grew up in agnostic, family, Jewish family, atheist Jewish family.
Atheist Jewish family, yes.
So that's incredible that you even could understand who Jesus was. And I know our viewers are wondering right now, did he have a physical appearance? Like, what did he look like?
He had a physical appearance. He was a man. I knew he was more than a man, but he appeared to be a man, but he was a perfect man. And I always say I couldn't look away from his face. His face was the most important thing because of the joy and the love coming from his eyes. I did not want to look away from his face. And his smile was brilliant and welcoming and funny.
Yeah.
And he looked like a man, early 30s, had hair about my length. It was brown with some lighter streaks. He beautiful hands and feet. He had kind of a robe on. I can't explain it. It was a very old-fashioned robe. And there was so much light and joy and love coming off of him that I never wanted to look away from him. I wanted to be with him forever.
That's so incredible. I know, Heidi, in your book, you detailed that he had a little crook in his nose,
did.
which is interesting.
He did, which I was staring at his nose thinking, because I didn't know anything about him. And I thought, wow, I wonder if one of his brothers punched him in the nose. I had no idea that he'd had brothers. I had no idea that he'd been beaten before the crucifixion. I didn't know anything about him, but I looked at his nose and thought it was perfect in its imperfection.
Yeah.
It made him more relatable.
Yes, God in human form, God in flesh. Oh, that's so beautiful. And Heidi, you said that there was so much joy and humor even emanating out of him. In the next moments, he began to show you a review of your life.
He did.
And there's even moments where he laughed with you.
We were laughing our heads off. He's hilarious. But there were silly moments in my life. There were funny things that happened. It wasn't all dire and doom and gloom. And he just laughed right with me. He's got the most amazing sense of humor. I always say Jesus is hilarious. We joked and laughed all the way to heaven. So it's like we laugh here on earth because he laughed first. I don't know how else to put it. Where do we think our laughter comes from?
That's beautiful. Give us an example of that laughter. I know there's a little story of a pink rattle, and as I was reading it, I was like, oh, he laughed.
He laughed. It was so funny. I was just a baby in my playpen. I was shaking a little pink rattle, and in my life review, I could see Jesus sitting in the playpen next to me, talking to me, so I'm shaking my rattle and listening to him. And some people knocked on the door and came in. My mother let them in, and they had a baby with them. So I'm watching all this from my baby eyes, and I'm watching it from my 16-year-old eyes with Jesus. And then the mom put the baby right next to me. She actually put him right where Jesus was sitting. And the first thing he did was grab the rattle and whack me over the nose with it. And I started screaming. I wasn't hurt, but Jesus and I just burst out laughing. And I could see that even back then, which is very strange to be with him watching this happening, and he's sitting with me as a child, I could see that even back then he had chuckled when it had happened. I wasn't hurt. I was indignant. I was mad that somebody took my rattle. And it was just funny moments like that, that even though there's something going on that might be, you might think, oh, that's unpleasant, but no, it was hilarious. It was just really funny to watch that. There were other moments when I cried watching some things that happened, and he was right there with me, comforting me.
And so you're saying that you would be looking back on that life review, so a painful moment where you're crying, and Jesus is with you, looking at the life review. But as you look back, you're seeing him with you in the moments of suffering.
Yes, I'm seeing him with me the entire time. I was never alone. I didn't know, in a sense I knew that, but I also didn't know that.
So this life review shows you that Jesus is with you when you're crying, when you're joyful, all throughout your life. And even in moments, you said he was rocking you to bed at night.
Yes, he did. And I didn't know it was him. I would just have a sense. I would talk to God all the time. I believed in God despite my parents' atheism. And I talked to him every night. And I had the sense that after a while, it would be time to go to sleep. And I would feel as if I was wrapped up in the warmth of a cloud. And I could feel my bed start to sway back and forth and then even up and down. And I knew it was God doing that for me, but I didn't know it was Jesus until I saw him in the life review doing exactly what I pictured God doing.
And the life review also did touch on painful moments. Actually, one of the moments is a painful moment you caused with another young boy. Jesus let you see that. And he let you see the impact that all of us, like our words, our negative behaviors towards others, can have on someone's life.
Absolutely.
Tell us a bit more about that.
I felt... I had said something really insulting to this 13-year-old boy. I was 10 years old, and he was very small. I was very tall for my age. And I said, why are you so shrimpy? And I felt really bad when I said it, but then I thought, it's just words. It's not just words, because when Jesus showed me this, I could feel this young man's heart shrink in his chest. And I knew I had done that. I had caused that pain. I felt his pain. I felt if I did something good or kind or helpful, I could feel the joy or the gratitude that someone else felt. If I did anything rude or insulting or hurtful, I could feel that hurt the other person felt. And I realized everything we do has a ripple effect. It has ramifications.
Yeah. So we really need to think about our actions and the things we're saying.
Yes.
Heidi, it's so interesting because when you think about the person of Jesus, for you, he's showing you his love and just, how accepted you are, right? We're all making these mistakes in life, and you're doing that life review with him. But also the reality is that up until that point, you were 16 years old, you had experienced a lot of trauma and abuse and neglect in your life. So intense suffering, and you detail that in the book, significant suffering. A lot of people, they think, when I meet Jesus, when I die, I'm going to have questions for him about why I've suffered or why this happened, or what was that like for you? Did you have those questions? Did you feel like this, you were getting answers? Did you feel resolve about the suffering you'd experienced or even caused?
There was no suffering. There was no more. The suffering was gone. I didn't even have a thought about it. There was not a single thought about anything I had suffered. There wasn't, I want to get even with that person, or why did that person do that? It was gone. It wasn't my problem. It wasn't my burden to carry. And all I could think about was Jesus. His joy, his forgiveness, his acceptance was everything to me. I did not think about any of the bad that had happened. What was important to me was behavior, how we treat each other, and how we love God. Those were the two things that were most important to me. And, I actually didn't have, as I've mentioned in the book, I didn't have a lot of questions because all of my questions at the time were answered.
Yeah.
They were gone. And it all made sense. If you ask me now exactly what made sense, I can't answer that because I can't remember. But everything made sense. And I realized even through suffering, God was with me. There was a purpose to that suffering. I learned a lot. It brought me closer to God.
It's amazing the idea that you do have answers when you're with God in eternity.
Yes.
And yet you can't articulate them now, but
articulate.
it's an encouragement to viewers who may be suffering or struggling or wondering,
Yes.
about why things are happening the way they're happening. That journey with Jesus was so beautiful, and it continued until you were with God the Father. Tell us about that.
It was amazing. I had so much fun with Jesus. We surfed on a wave of light, and I could see all this light of all colors underneath our feet. It was tickling the bottoms of my feet. It was flowing through my fingers like water. And we talked and we laughed all the way to heaven. I guess it was what I can only describe as heaven. We did pass things, and I detail that in the book. But a lot of what I only saw because I was staring at Jesus' face. I couldn't look away from his face, and I would see things passing by behind him. But when we did get to God the Father, we came to a point where there was almost a threshold that we crossed, like a doorway, like entering a doorway. And once we entered the doorway, we entered a light, and it was a living light. The light was love, and I knew the light was God. And the next thing I knew, I was sitting on God's lap, and it was God and it was Jesus. They're both together. The Holy Spirit, if it was there, I was not aware of it at that point because Jesus left me with the Holy Spirit later. But God the Father and Jesus were one and the same and yet separate. So I was sitting on God's lap like a toddler, kicking her feet, and I had my face buried in his chest, and I never wanted to leave. I just wanted to sit there forever, for all eternity. He's a big God. I tried to look up and sneak a look at his face, but I couldn't see it. It was shrouded somehow. It was covered somehow. But I kept my eyes glued to Jesus' face the entire time. I couldn't look at God's face. Yeah. And it was from God's lap that he showed me what I did see of heaven.
What did you see?
I saw it was infinitely far away. If you can imagine looking across an entire universe, I was looking across an entire universe. And the first thing I saw was grass. I was very nearsighted on Earth. I couldn't see very well, but I could see perfectly. And I could see green grass. I could see every single blade of this green grass in this massive meadow, this infinite meadow. And I heard the grass singing, which was remarkable. It was amazing. And it was the thing that left the biggest impression on me was that grass and the song of the grass. The grass was singing the praises of God. I looked a little bit farther, and I saw flowers. And I saw all different colors of flowers, but I kept coming back to these really blue flowers that looked like irises. I looked farther, and I saw grove upon grove of trees, and they look kind of like aspen trees. That's the best way I can describe it. Mm-hmm. And I could see every leaf on every tree and every vein on every leaf on every tree. And I noticed they were moving. The leaves were moving. The leaves were quaking. Yeah. The flowers were swaying, and they were all moving in time to the song of the grass, and everything was moving in the light of God. It was God's light animating everything. I looked a little farther, and I saw a pathway. A pathway now began to open up through the meadow, and I could hear people singing, and they were singing the same song as the grass. Wow. And I could see them coming, but they were veiled. I couldn't see their faces yet. I couldn't see them yet. And it was then that Jesus came back and told me I needed to go back. And
so you are sent back to Earth.
Well, I argued with them
you
about
argued. I get it.
Yeah, I didn't want to go back.
You've seen heaven? I get it. Oh, wow. And you come back to Earth with this big experience. Mm-hmm. You told your sisters what happened, but you didn't tell many family members. You tried to.
I tried to initially.
Yeah. And Heidi, now today you're sharing your story. And of course, your story appears in one of John Burke's books on near-death experiences, but your story now in your book. And there are so many life lessons you've learned from this journey. You know, for our viewers watching right now who may be facing the end of life or are having, or in a situation where their family member or a loved one is, what would you say to them as a word of encouragement given your experience of the reality of God and heaven?
The one word is hope. I had no hope. Before my near-death experience, I was hopeless. I had no hope whatsoever. So I would say, yes, I took away hope. It's probably the biggest takeaway, that and God's love and the fact that he is real, that heaven is real. And I knew that the one thing I needed to do in this life was follow Jesus. Honestly, follow him and treat my neighbors well, treat myself well, treat my children well, and love God.
Yeah.
But yes, there's a lot of tragedy in this life. I'm a nurse. I'm a hospice nurse, so I've dealt with tragedy for years, and I understand that. But God is always with us. He never leaves us.
Yeah.
He's always there.
Heidi, it's such a good encouragement, and your story is so profound, such an encouragement to people who need to know that heaven is real. Following Jesus is the way forward in life, and the great commandment, loving God with all your heart, mind, and soul, loving your neighbor as yourself. Heidi, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me share this story.
Thank you. Well, if you want to read more of Heidi's story, I just want to encourage you to get her new book, What I Saw in Heaven, the incredible true story of the day I died, met Jesus, and returned to life a new person. Right now, we've got a special word for you from Pastor Robbie Simons.